In a quiet corner of Lelley, a picturesque village east of Hull, the unassuming Stag's Head Inn became the unlikely backdrop for a high-stakes takedown by the National Crime Agency. If the location of the arrest was unusual, the profile of the offenders made this operation even more confusing. When the NCA becomes involved in serious crime, their operatives are used to arresting highly cunning individuals with lengthy criminal histories. However, the men in question were of student age, naïve, and from a couple of quiet Scottish villages where anything of note rarely takes place. When the pair were handed down hefty sentences, the judge admitted he was bewildered by how the pair had got mixed up with the South American cartels and a cargo of drugs worth £42 million. However, the conviction of drug traffickers from Argyll was not a shock for Scottish law enforcement. The country, with a long and jagged coastline, has an extensive history of smuggling, of narcotics, people, and contraband. You are watching OCG TV. The whisky industry on Scotland's islands, one of the area's biggest employers, was born in part thanks to a desire to avoid excisemen looking to collect taxes on the spirit. Coastal islands have a ready supply of people, including fishing crew and skippers, who either have boats or know how to use them. These are assets and skills that are heavily in demand by organised criminals, including international ones. Gangsters have long understood the potential of Scotland's seafarers and the many harbours, jetties and even beaches of Scottish sea locks. So has law enforcement. Maritime or blue crime is part of any coastal community, and the Scottish Highlands and Islands are not immune. Moran and Livingstone are not outliers. A year ago, French Marine commandos seized a Spanish-registered yacht in the Atlantic carrying 40 bales of cocaine worth about £140 million as part of a Europe-wide operation named Mentor, aiming to dismantle the world's biggest boat drug trafficking ring with links to British gangsters in Spain and to Norwegian, Mexican and Colombian crime groups. The yacht's skipper, Connor Cohen, a 30-year-old trawlerman, was from the island of Lewis and had strong connections with Oban. He is currently on remand in Spain. His detention was originally kept under wraps as police targeted gang members elsewhere. At the end of 2024, 2 other skippers were arrested on fishing boats at Tarbert in Argyll and at Mallaig, further up the west coast, as part of a human trafficking investigation by Police Scotland. And it's only been a few months since the BBC recently released a 6-part podcast telling the story of how a small Welsh community and its rural police force foiled an international drugs ring that targeted a section of remote coastline. Western and northern Scotland's jagged coast is not unique. Cocaine smugglers long ago identified the inlets of Galicia in northwest Spain with its maritime and fishing communities as a major doorway to Europe. Yachts or trawlers loaded with drugs have been seized heading for Ireland and Cornwall and Channel ports. And perhaps the biggest ever seizure in the UK was on board a Turkish crude tug off Aberdeen in 2016. Moran and Livingstone were also working in the North Sea. The plot began on March 29th in 2023 when the 2 Scots turned up at Padstow Harbour, Cornwall, and bought a fishing boat for £40,000 with false names. The boat was taken to Southwold Harbour, Suffolk, where it was moored. Moran, Mr. McAllister, and a Colombian, Didier Tordesillas, who had flown in specifically for this operation, boarded the boat and set sail. In the early hours of the following day, Border Force officers boarded and searched the boat off the coast of Lowestoft, Suffolk. No drugs or contraband were found as the Border Force officers acted a little bit too early, because the cocaine was due to be collected later on. After this near miss, it might have been thought that the group would abort their plan, but to the amazement of the NCA, they continued, thinking they would be undetected. The group was amateur in its execution, but was clearly well backed financially, given that they purchased the fishing boat for £40,000, which was later abandoned. Plan A now rumbled. The crew plotted for another month about the next course of action. The decision was then taken that the previous boat could no longer be used. Anthony McAllister, who had been hired to skipper the boat, had maintained the boat was not seaworthy. The four men booked into the Holiday Inn, Hull, between April 25th and 27th using false names. They then travelled to Dewsbury to buy a 4x4 vehicle with a tow bar. The next day, 3 of the men left the Holiday Inn in the 4x4 to buy a second boat. The boat finally used was bought for £6,000 from Wells in Somerset, along with a Volvo from Bristol. The whole time they were covertly monitored by police. They then went to Stone Creek, a remote point of the Humber estuary, and carried the inflatable boat to the edge of the water. It is believed that they attempted to launch it at 9:50 p.m. in pitch darkness, but lower water levels prevented them from doing so. It was then taken to a nearby car park and abandoned. Things were not going to plan. On May 3rd, everything was finally ready, and the team went to the Humber Rescue Slipway at Hessel. Moran, McAllister and Rees went out to sea in the inflatable boat, while Daniel Livingstone stayed on shore. The 3 men were alleged to be heading up the Humber estuary for a rendezvous in the North Sea to pick up the cocaine. The 3 men returned to shore near Easington Beach Caravan Park at 12:15 a.m, where Livingstone was waiting for them and had been seen shining a torch out to sea and talking on his mobile phone before they approached. NCA officers observed Moran and Rees ditch the inflatable on the beach after unloading several bags into the van. The boat was later recovered on the beach at Easington, East Yorkshire, after the drugs had been loaded. The consignment was sizable, half a ton in weight, and a purity of between 86 to 89%. It would have been sold for millions had it reached the streets of the UK. The van with the cocaine inside was taken to what they thought would be safety outside the Stag's Head Inn, Lelley. Shortly after 7:53 a.m, police swooped in and arrested the 4 men. The van and the cocaine were seized. Moran and McAllister made no comment to all questions during interview. A jury at Hull Crown Court found Moran guilty of conspiracy to import cocaine in October 2024 after an 8-day trial. Livingstone and Tordesillas Rees pleaded guilty to the same offence on June 5th and July 22nd respectively. Anthony McAllister, who had been involved in boats from a young age, claimed he had been asked to pick up a consignment of tobacco. Excise duty on imported hand-rolling tobacco would have been in the region of £200,000 and could be lucrative if sold on the black market. McAllister would later be acquitted. Daniel Livingstone's lawyer told the court that he was in debt and the lure of easy money led him down a dark path. It was alleged he was offered £40,000 for the job. Moran's representative insisted his role was small and that the main organisers were the South American gangsters. The court heard that he had played a key role in the operation and was the main point of contact in the UK. A jury at Hull Crown Court found Moran guilty of conspiracy to import cocaine. He was sentenced to 15 years imprisonment and Livingstone to 7 years and 9 months imprisonment. Rees is due to be sentenced at a later date. In the solitude of their prison cells, these young offenders will have ample time to confront their decisions. The bravado that once fueled their risky ventures fades, replaced by regret and a stark awareness of the ripple effect of their crimes. They may replay the moments that led them down the dark path, questioning their judgment and the motivations of those who pulled them into the scheme. For some, it will be a turning point, a chance to acknowledge their mistakes, seek redemption, and rebuild their lives. For others, the weight of failure and shame might linger, serving as a somber reminder of opportunities squandered in their youth.